hopefully you should get a notification. Hi everyone, and welcome to our DoqaruCon speaker series. Today I am joined by Mark LaCour, who is in Houston, Texas. So thank you so much for joining me, Mark.
Yeah, so Sarah, thank you for staying up late, because I know it's late where you are. We're on the other side of the pond. It's in the middle of the day for us.
Not too bad. We're only at 7:10 right now, PM. So I've spoken with Houston much later in the day. Yes, I think the last call we had, it was about midnight my time. Not so
Yeah,
bad.
that's the global world we live in.
Exactly, the industry we work in as well. So we had invited Mark onto the podcast because Mark and his company OGGN have decided to partner with DoqaruCon, and him and his team are coming over next month. So I'm really excited to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, it's funny. It feels like I know you already, even though we've yet to meet in person.
I know, it's the amazing thing about technology, at least when it works. I
Yeah.
always get a bit nervous doing things like this, that it's just going to fail on me one day, but so far so good. So yeah, Mark, I just really wanted to go over a little bit about your own background and the business, because I'm sure that many of our listeners will have heard of you and listened to your own podcasts, but there may be a few delegates coming to the conference that haven't. So I just thought it'd be a great way to introduce you to the Aberdeen crowd, and then you can hopefully meet many of them during your time here.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. I love Scotland. I spent a lot of time in Aberdeen, a lot of time in the whole North Sea area in my career. Oil and Gas Global Network, I would like to say we were really smart and we saw this podcast thing coming, but that's not the truth. Literally about 6 years ago, when my marketing person came to me and said we should do a podcast, I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Nobody listens to those things. Go do something to make us some money. And he kept on and kept on. And eventually I said yes. And we started the first oil and gas podcast, which is Oil and Gas This Week, which is now the largest oil and gas podcast in the world. And besides that one, as of today, we have 7 more, with even more coming in for 2020 and 2021. So we somehow managed to build this network of oil and gas podcasts. And Sarah, as you know, this is a wonderful way to help educate and help bridge the gaps between different countries, different nationalities, different geographic regions. You know, we all have something in our world in common, which is energy and the energy business. And I'm just very lucky to be sitting on top of a whole bunch of really good podcast hosts that we all work together as a team. We have all these different shows, and we get to spread the information about our industry to everybody. So I love it. I love it. But I didn't know that podcasting was important when it first started. So I learned my lesson on that one.
Well, you learned way before me, because I've only just gotten into it the last 12 months or so. And I can't actually remember the last time I listened to music in the car.
Right.
Every time I'm in the car now, the podcast is on. I think I'm following about 18, I'm subscribed to about 18 different podcasts now. Tried a few and unsubscribed. And you're right, there is hardly any when it comes to, not just oil and gas, but the energy sectors. And I think some people have kind of tried it and given up. And your one is the most consistent and the best content that I found. And that's how we ended up talking initially, because I reached out to you on LinkedIn following listening to the podcast.
Yeah, that's great. So the funny thing is, all of my hosts all started as a listener to one of the podcasts. So we all have something in common in that we listen to the podcast. And like I said, it's amazing the journey that we've been on. But it's also amazing how it allows smaller companies to compete with bigger companies, right? So all of our podcasts are sponsored, all sponsored by big companies. We actually make a living at it, or some of us make a living at it. Some of us, it's a side business. But just 5 or 6 years ago, if you wanted to have this type of reach, you had to have an enormous marketing and PR budget behind you. And now you and me, with a webcam and an internet connection, can actually put good quality, useful content out there. And we don't need to be big. It's one of the things I love about it is any size company can start doing this type of content creation in this new media space, and you don't need big budgets. You need to understand how to do it, and you need to have good, useful, valuable content. But still, this is what we're doing right now. Anybody could do this.
You guys are interviewing people all over the world. And I guess, like before, you would have had to get on the flights and travel days at a time just to have that 1 hour interview and record with somebody. Where now, technology has given us this opportunity with such a global reach, and the content that comes from that because you're speaking to people from around the world and different parts of the sector is fantastic.
Yeah, just be able to share those stories with our audiences is incredible. I mean, literally every day we have between 10 and 50 people from around the world reach out to us and go, "Hey, Mr. LaCour, I didn't know my cell phone was made from plastics made from hydrocarbons, or I didn't know my girlfriend's lipstick comes from crude oil." And just the fact that we can share that information makes us all feel good. You know, it's really, really like a family. Our family's global and it's large, but our listeners are really like family.
Yeah. So how many subscribers do you have on the podcasts now?
We're over 700,000 from 183 different countries. It is
Wow.
insane. It is insane. And it's growing so fast, I can't keep up. Just one of our shows, Oil and Gas This Week, which is the #1, I think is like right around 500,000.
Wow.
Yeah, people recognize my voice. I'll be in some airport in some country and somebody recognizes my voice and they feel like they know me because they've listened to me for 5 years, right? So you have this intimacy that you don't get with any other type of media. And that we just love it. But yeah, even I'm amazed at the numbers, at the growth that we've had.
Do you know how many episodes you guys have put out so far?
Yeah, so Oil and Gas This Week is pushing its 200th episode. In fact, we're getting ready to have a big, I can't announce where, we're getting ready to have a big event around our 200th episode. It'll be here in the States. And then depending on how old the other 7 podcasts, some of them are brand new, like the tech podcast, it only has 20 episodes. And some of them have 80 or 100 or 110. You know, it just depends how long the show's been around.
Yeah, amazing. So I need to come over to the States for the party.
It's going to be great. We don't have all the final details worked out, but we have a very large oil and gas service company that has welcomed us in. We're going to have their young professionals there. We're going to have other companies' young professionals there. We're going to have drinks and food, and it's just going to be a big party. It's going to be fun.
That sounds great. And it's bringing the industry into the 21st century. You know, from we speak about trying to attract the youngsters into the industry. And I think, you know, the way we use media plays a huge part in that, doesn't it?
It plays a huge part both outside the industry and inside. It's really interesting. You know, there's a lot of anti-oil and gas sentiment going on around the world, right? And that is really the oil and gas industry's own fault. For the last 50 years, when somebody says something wrong in public, whether it's intentional or accidental, we never correct them. And then you add that layer of social media about a decade ago that came in, and now one person can have the ear of millions. And so as an industry, we need to adapt more technology like this to help get our message out. I'm not talking politics. I'm not talking about opinions. I'm talking about just like the truth about stuff. Yeah. And that's one of the things we take very seriously. We're actually in the process of launching an oil and gas corporate social responsibility, which is a horrible title, but it's a great theme where we actually start telling the good stories of our industry, right? But also internally, if you have a large company and you have, you know, annual updates to your healthcare or annual stuff that you want your people to know, something changes, stuff to your shareholders, you can send that 30-slide PowerPoint deck. Go ahead. How many people would think actually read that? But why don't you start an internal podcast where you interview your CEO and talk about what's changing and then push it out to the employees? It's a great way to communicate with your people, both inside your company and outside your company.
Yeah, great idea. Cool. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how the company got started, or maybe a bit about your own personal background first, because you've been in the industry a long time. I'm sure that I read you had sold over $300 million worth into the industry and have worked around the world. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your own background, Mark.
Yeah, I got started about 25 years ago with the phone company that was in the east part of the United States called Bell South. And they literally gave me their oil and gas book of business because no other sales rep wanted it. It was hard. The companies were hard to deal with. It had declining revenue, and I didn't know anything. So I just took it because I wanted the job. And it took me a couple of years to figure it out. But once I figured out the culture of the oil and gas industry, then I was able to actually really go in and help my clients. And they respected that. And they appreciated me for that. We went through several natural disasters together. I made sure that I was there, giving them all the support I could. And I have relationships to this day that was based upon things that happened like during Hurricane Katrina. And so I got a chance to learn the industry. Now, this is a long time ago, and I'm not going to say the name of the company. But the very first time I went offshore, I just happened to know the head of one of the business units from this large oil and gas company. And I said, I had never been offshore. And he goes, meet me at the heliport on Wednesday. Now, you couldn't do this today because there's all kinds of permitting and certifications and safety training you have to go. But I went offshore for the first time because I knew the guy. I was in the helicopter. We went offshore, and he goes, this is a moon pool. This is a mud pump, right? this is iron roughneck. We don't use that right now. We use change and tongs. So I was very lucky in the beginning of my career that the oil and gas industry showed me how it worked. And that's been a vital part of my success from to this day. And then about 10 years ago, my last corporate job had a senior sales position, and they capped my commission. And I don't know why you would ever cap a salesperson commission, but they did. And it just really, Sarah, got me mad. So I started my own company, MotoPoint, out of anger. I think even to this day, you can Google oil and gas sales experts, and I think organically you'll still see me come up like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Google still thinks I'm the #1 guy on the planet doing that, although I haven't done it in 5 years. And then my marketing guy comes to me with the idea of starting a podcast for our own internal marketing. We start the first podcast, Oil and Gas This Week, and about 3 months into it, Red Wing Boots calls me and says, we want to sponsor your podcast. And Sarah almost said, why? But the old sales guy in me kicked in and said, shut up, let them talk. And that was the beginning of where we are now. And so, you know, to go from being a sales guy, junior sales guy in the early 90s to now sitting on top of a company that has, you know, 8 large oil and gas podcasts and more in the works, it's just been incredible. But it's been a good journey. It's been a fun journey. There have been times when it was not so fun, but we're at a point now where we're growing, we're doing good work. We're getting to have fun. I mean, for us to be able to jump on a plane, come across the pond and come to your conference, get to meet people in Aberdeen, get to meet the marketing and sales leaders, you know, how wonderful a thing is that? You know, I mean, it almost doesn't even sound like work, but it is.
Yeah. And everyone's really excited because we're, for those of you that don't know, we're going to do a live podcast on stage.
Yep.
And the amount of people that have read that on the agenda go, what is that? You know, because they don't even know what a podcast is, some of them. So I think it's going to really open people's eyes to podcasting, which is amazing. And I'm sure everyone will be following you guys after the conference.
Well, we'll see. Let's see how good a job we do. Since it's live, we don't know yet how it's going to turn out. Fingers crossed.
Well, because we're holding at the exhibition center, we have technicians on standby, which is fantastic to help us out with any tech requirements. So hopefully that will help. It's certainly not something I would be doing without you guys for the conference. There's enough stress without adding that into the mix. But I'm really excited. And Mark's going to be interviewing Dan Rigby. He's one of the business development directors from Wood. And Dan's had over 20 years in wood, so has seen a lot of change, has gone through a number of industry downturns, a lot of diversification, building, you know, sales teams, working closely with the different marketing teams around the world. So I think it's going to be really insightful and provide great content for the conference.
Yeah, we're really looking forward. So Patrick and I will be on stage doing the interviews. It's really interesting. So one of our future podcasts, and one of the reasons we're even having this conversation, is that we see that gap. We see that senior sales leaders and senior marketing leaders in oil and gas really don't know all the tools that are at their disposal, right? And so we're starting one of our new shows is Oil and Gas Sales and Marketing Podcast, which will record an episode live from your conference, because there's so much out there, stuff like what we're doing right now. Right? Most oil and gas companies, their sales and marketing teams could greatly benefit from putting content out like this, but they don't, right? So we want to try to help our industry, you know, use those tools and techniques that the other industries have been using for 5 or 6 years now. So, you know, we starting a podcast just for that. We're looking forward to launching it from your conference.
Yeah, it'll be great. And there are so many, just from conversations I've had with especially some of the larger companies in the industry, that are taking teams along, you know, as a development opportunity. So it's coming out of the training budget instead of the marketing budget, which is interesting. And they say, you know, there's nothing else like this. We don't feel like we have the support of the technical guys do in the industry. And it's quite different and new. So people are still unsure on how to take, you know, sales development conference in the energy sector is a bit alien. But the more and more people we speak to and talk about, you know, the value that we're going to be able to add to them and hopefully help them change their own sales and marketing strategies going forward, trying out, you know, new things and coming into the 21st century a little, is going to be amazing. We've got loads of different sort of sales technologies being shown on the day as well, to help especially those more international companies that have sales teams around the world not communicating half of the time.
Yeah, it's the world of sales has changed so much. So 20 years ago, being a good salesperson was about being an educator, but that was that way because there was no internet. So a good salesperson would go to your prospects and say, here's all the stuff we can do. Do you want any of it? And I know I'm making it sound easy. It wasn't, but that's basically what you had to do. In today's world, a good salesperson is a problem solver. And a really good salesperson goes to the prospect and shows them a problem that they have, that they didn't know they have, that the salesperson can help them solve. But you need to be able to do that in scale in today's world, right? So things like social, things like email automation, all that sort of stuff has been used in other industries for a decade now. We don't use that in oil and gas, but we need to. And the truth is we have to. Our industry is changing. It's becoming faster. It's becoming leaner. You got this new younger workforce. You have different buyer behaviors. And so if you have an organization that depends on selling products or services and you don't change, unfortunately, you'll get left behind. And at the conference, we're going to try to help spread those techniques and tools and processes so we can help bring the sales and marketing leaders in our industry up to speed where they need to be so they can compete.
Absolutely. And I think because of the industries of a technical nature, a lot of our commercial teams started off as technical people. So, because they know their stuff on the technology, the software, the drilling tool, they've ended up in a sales role, but without really having any training. So a lot of these guys still feature bashing the hell out of everything instead of, like you say, insight selling and showing that they have a solution to their client's challenge or problem. And it's just a different mindset. And once that mindset shifts, they totally get it. But I think it's really difficult if you're from a technical background to think that way, because it's like, oh, ours, our product's the best, it's amazing, look at all of these widgets, and feature bashing it. But that's just not what the clients want to hear.
No, so you have to understand, a good salesperson has to understand their client's business, and you went to your point, like my widget may be the best. Well, maybe your client's business doesn't need the best. Maybe it needs just good enough. And if you're in that place and your product really is the best, you need to be open and transparent as a salesperson and go, you know what? I'm not a good fit for you. This is a better company. You're still adding value, even though they're not buying from you, because you're becoming the subject matter expert. You're that domain expertise. And that's what a salesperson in today's world really needs to be that ultimate problem solver. And the sales role and the marketing role, which in oil and gas was always separate, like a lot of times they even talk to each other. That doesn't work anymore. They need to be joined at the hip. What's in your head as a salesperson, the interactions you have with your client and your prospects, is what the marketing team needs to understand so they can market effectively. If you work in a company, and this is the conversation you have with marketing. Marketing says, you didn't close any of my leads last month, and your responses were, they all were really bad leads. That's the indicator that you're not communicating with your marketing department, right? And you have to work together. I'm watching Schlumberger actually market a lot of their tools online right now, which is something oil and gas has never done, in a very modern, aggressive way, but they're marketing it to their competitors. The old Schlumberger would have never let their competitors rent their tools. Now the new part of Schlumberger, I think it's called extreme engineering, they don't care because they still make money, right? So it's a new way of thinking. They literally have an online marketplace. The world of oil and gas sales is going that way, whether you want it to or not, and you need to understand it. And if you don't understand it now, this conference is a great place to actually understand this.
Yeah. We have as you know, we work with a lot of new start tech companies as well. And obviously they have to stay quiet on the tech for so long because they need to go through IP. But even once they have the protection there's this huge hesitation about talking about it online because they're scared about what their competitors, or indirect competition usually, if it's a new technology, it's usually indirect and usually from the big players in the industry. And I keep saying to them, if you don't get out there and talk about it, there will be another solution that comes forward and you need to constantly be ahead of your competition, whether it's direct or indirect. And it's just trying to build that confidence that you can talk about it online without speaking about every single feature of the product. You can talk about the solution and the value that the clients are going to get. And it's so much easier online to market direct once you know who those clients are, who you can help. The tools that we have, and most of them are free as well. They don't need this massive marketing budget, that they can get right to them. It's
Yeah,
just,
so it's really interesting. I hear this a lot. It's part of the culture is that everybody's worried about their competition. I'm gonna tell you right now, as long as you understand your client's business better than your competition, they aren't your competition. They can copy your feature or your product exactly. And if you know your client's business better, they're not competing with you at all. I'll give you a perfect example. How many times has a salesperson went somewhere to try to sell something in oil and gas, and the prospect goes, well, we don't have budget for it this year. Well, a good salesperson would automatically know, you know what? He's talking about CapEx budget, which
yeah,
has to be approved each year. What, instead of me selling this to you, I rent it to you. Then
yeah,
it hits your operating budget or OpEx.
okay,
And the client will go, can I do that? And you go, yeah. Where there's a salesperson helping the client solve a problem. The problem was, how does the client buy it if he doesn't have budget? Well, you move it over to OpEx. Once again, that's a good salesperson being a good problem solver. It doesn't matter if somebody else competes with you making the same pipe dope. When you're able to have that level of business conversation, that puts you ahead of everybody. And to your point, Sarah, that's the type of conversation you want to have in mass. So
yeah.
when somebody listens to what I just rattled off on your podcast, watch, it's going to stick in their head. It's like, I didn't know that I could sell stuff to the OpEx budget. And we're going to have 20 salespeople that got educated by your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm so glad that people are podcasting and pushing content out there, because, we're all busy and written content is fantastic. And I've read, oh, my lights
You
just,
just disappeared.
yeah, 2 seconds. My lights just went off. They're on a standstill. Sorry, everyone.
You have to leave that in there.
It's a Sunday evening. No one else is in the building. So if I don't move, I'll just have to do like the wave every now. Sorry, yeah, written content's fantastic, but you need the time, in front of your screen, to read it. Whereas with podcasts, you can listen to it while you work, you can listen to it in the car, going for a walk, at the gym. There's so many options there that I just feel like people absorb the information a bit better because they're in the right place to do so.
It also makes you better use of time that's not productive. So a perfect example is like commuting, driving in the car, whatever. By listening to a podcast, you can learn, because what podcast really is at its core, it's education through storytelling. So it's stuff that you want to listen to and you learn during non-productive or not as productive times. And you're actually in people's heads. As you said, written content's great. I'm a voracious reader, but it's out here, right? You can't read while you're driving, or if you are reading while you're driving, stop it, because I've seen you on the
Yeah.
roads. Don't do that. But yeah, podcast is a great way to educate yourself or anybody else.
Yeah. And it's content as well you can put out there that's there forever. Whereas, if you put out a comment, for example, on LinkedIn, it'll be there for X amount of months and disappear. Articles are slightly different. They stay around, but most people are not writing articles, right? It's like 1% of the people on LinkedIn actually write articles. So if you're going to choose, a media stream to push your content out there, video is fantastic, audio is fantastic, and choosing platforms like podcasting, YouTube, where the content's there forever. You're building that library. And now I'm starting to get to the point where somebody asks me a question, I'll just send them a link and say, listen to this, which is amazing. Not even all my podcasts. I do your podcast as well, actually. Have a listen to this, or maybe you learn about some technology that you believe could help a company, just send them the link. And if they get hit with an audio link, they're more likely to read it, listen to it, than if you send them this massive article and something else to read, because we're on the emails all the time, right? So nobody wants to read any more than they have to.
Well, and like I said, you can listen to that audio file while you're doing other things, which makes it super convenient. I mean, I listen when I work out. It's my favorite time to listen. And the funny thing is, I can't listen to my own podcast and critique it while we're doing it because I know it's me. But I can go to the gym and listen to myself on a podcast and critique it like it's not me. And the funny thing, Sarah, is sometimes I laugh at my own jokes, which is funny because I'm laughing. I know what the joke is. I said it myself. But that ability to absorb that while I'm working out is awesome. And that's like I said, that's one of the powers of the podcasting.
Yeah, and you just learn all the time, don't you? Every time you do one, same with events or anything else you do, I guess you just keep getting better. And I do notice that with people that are just starting out like ourselves, when I compare the podcast format and content compared to someone like yourself that's hundreds of episodes in, you really do notice the difference. And it just shows that practice makes perfect. So we all need to get started now if we want to end up, being the best.
Yeah, if fear of you messing up is what's holding you back from starting a podcast, first thing, stop. It's silly. We tell all our new podcast hosts, you're going to be really bad in the beginning. I'm sorry, it's how it is. And the only way to get better is to do it. But the crucial thing about a podcast is that it's not live. So if you're worried about messing up, don't. You just edit the bad parts out and put what's left back together. And then eventually you get where you have less and less bad parts you have to cut out. The end product could be great, even though half of it you end up not including because you mess things up. So don't be scared of it. It's normal to be scared of doing something that's new. But I tell everybody that's thinking about doing a podcast, go buy the equipment, which, by the way, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars, a couple $100, you can buy good podcast equipment. Go buy the equipment first. And now you've made a financial commitment because you wrote a check for that commitment. And now you have one less excuse about why to start your podcast because now you have the equipment. And just start and put it out there. And it's not going to be great in the beginning, but I promise you, you'll get better. And even your first episodes, our first episodes are horrible. I mean, they're cringeworthy, but the content is still valuable, right? Yeah. The audio quality may be subpar, and we may have talked too much on one tangent, but the core content is still good. So just do it, people.
Yeah, it's like start now, get perfect later.
Yeah.
And I think most things in business, if you want to disrupt and you want to be ahead of the game, you have to go with it. And to be honest, like if you've got started, other people are going to listen to you, and it might not be perfect, but they're probably going to think, well done, at least you're trying. So yeah, ours are definitely far from perfect, but I'm really enjoying doing them and just meeting lots of interesting people and listening to their stories. Like you said, it's really just recorded stories, which is awesome. So I just wanted to ask you a question about diversification, Mark, because I know you are very focused in oil and gas at the moment. Are you starting to work at all in the offshore renewables space?
Yes and no. And
Okay.
yes. So we actually, one of our future podcasts is oil and gas renewables, oil and gas clean energy. We haven't figured out what the title is yet, but it's really fascinating for us to watch. 10 years ago, when all of the majors talked about their renewable programs, quite honestly, it was a PR stunt, right? Now it's real. They're looking to see if they can make money at it. They're looking to see if it's different ways of doing business. The old Statoil, which is now Equinor, is doing some incredible work with offshore wind. But they're not just trying to generate offshore wind so that they look good in the public eye. They're doing things that are very innovative, like, can I power this drilling platform with offshore wind energy? That's genius, right? You're taking two things that have already existed and put it together in a way that nobody's done before. And so that's on our roadmap as well. That is part of the present of our industry. It's also part of the future of our industry, and we will play a role there. What's going to happen? I don't know. The one thing that does bother me is that people in oil and gas, some people in oil and gas will look at the renewable market and look at them as competition. And it bothers me to death because it's not competition. We're all energy providers. If you think about us as humans, we started out with biofuel. We started off burning wood. And then not that long ago, we powered our lamps with whale oil. Now, come on, we've gotten much more environmentally responsible than killing whales for light. And so it's going to change. It's always changed before. It's always going to change in the future. And it's part of the mix. So, for anyone out there that's listening that think that renewables and oil and gas are competition, stop it, please. We're not. We both have a lot of the same challenges, and we need to work together. And in the oil and gas industry, we use renewables all over the place. We just never talk about it, right? Because they make sense out in the middle of nowhere, and you need to power a radio or transmission valves, whatever. Of course, you could throw up solar. We've been doing that since the 70s. We just never talk about that. So yeah, we're in that world, and we're getting ready to launch a podcast around that world. We just haven't quite gotten to there yet.
Yeah, that's great. It's something we're definitely going to touch on at the conference as well, because obviously, especially during the last downturn, a lot of companies have tried to, in the supply chain, have looked at diversification strategy into offshore renewables because there's so many transferable expertise, skills, personnel. And you're absolutely right. Instead of this them and us mentality is trying to get us to work together, because there's so much opportunity if we can learn to do that. And in Scotland and in the North Sea, we're definitely seeing, obviously the push from government on energy transition. Some of the operators who had not been looking at renewables before starting to, and the supply chain are looking at, you know, the diversification even more so. So it's definitely something we'll touch on. We've got some really great case studies on stage of companies that have successfully done that and have grown significantly because of it. So yeah, I just wanted to, because I hadn't heard anything yet on the podcast, and when we've spoken, I just thought I'd ask the question. So anyway, we could talk all day, or all
day.
all night in my case. And I'm really looking forward to you guys coming over to Scotland for the conference. And thank you so much again for your support. In the meantime, if anyone wants to get in touch with yourselves, what are the best places to go? The website, social media?
Yeah, yes to all of that. So just search for OGGN.com. You can hit us up on the website. We're also on all the socials out there. We're real active on LinkedIn right now. You and I were just talking about that before we turned the mic on, the camera on. But yeah, reach out to us. Actually, if you could go to the conference, hit me up on Twitter. It's Mark _LaCour. And let me know you could be at the conference. I'd actually love to shake your hand and meet you in person.
Yeah, that'd be great. And Mark's Patrick are going to be at the conference all day and for the dinner in the evening. So for those of you that are coming along, I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunity to meet them. And yeah, so we will leave it there. Thank you again so much for your time, Mark.
This is awesome, Sarah.
In like 3 weeks, I can't believe
3 weeks, yeah.
Coming round. I think we first spoke in September. So yeah, I'm excited. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Yep, cheers.
Bye. Okay, just stop recording.